This is my little bat cave. Batman had his cave, and Underdog even had a phone booth. This is what I do for all my preaching. A section of my garage is just stored just for my preaching stuff. So when I open a door, everything is here. And one thing I like to teach some of these young up and coming open air preachers is just because you preach at one event, you may not get the same result at another event, and you shouldn't. Street preaching is different from campus preaching, which is different from event preaching. I have some open air preachers that maybe saw something from us at the Mardi Gras, and they're going to try to emulate that. You're not going to have that. Again, that was then, and you need to be concerned about doing something what God wants you to be, and don't try to emulate us. Sometimes we have to just hold the sign, and that's plenty good. That's all that we get away with. So not every event is a Mardi Gras. Not every event is a good debate on a campus. You have to be geared to know when to preach a particular message. I have tons of different signs that I use. Of course, this was the one that I used in Russia that had against sodomy in Russia, and it gave us favor during the Olympics. And so, you know, this is a Russian banner that could be used quite often. This is a banner for Catholics that we use quite a bit. I don't take this at a Mormon conference. I, of course, keep it to the Catholics. So I keep it posted to who the people are that need to hear the particular message. Here's one, Jail to the Chief. This one here is an old one. I had it since Clinton was in office, and this is what I stand in front of the White House with. In God we should continue to trust. I've got banners for all kinds of occasions that I use just to preach to particular people. I even have this one, which is pretty simple. There are some areas that we go to and preach where people aren't very smart, aren't very educated. As a matter of fact, they don't even know how to read English or any type of English at all. So we dummy down the banner for their sake. Just a couple of words, got the cross, and even though they may not hear some preaching, at least they can understand what it is that we're trying to communicate. And so we've got anything from banners with people's names on them to a particular church. And this particular banner is for Jews. It's a Muslim banner that Jesus is the Son of God. And so, you know, of course, oftentimes you get told that we only pick on Muslims. That's not true. We've got Muslim banners, but here's a case in point that if a Jewish event is going on, this is what we're going to fly. A few weekends ago, it was Israel's 66th anniversary for them becoming a nation, and that's where this banner was flying. So depending on the circumstance, we have banners. Here's an interesting banner, and this banner is supporting war. Oftentimes you get a whole bunch of leftist, pinko, commie, socialists that are anti-war. Well, I fly this banner to stir them up. And I preach that they are at war with God. And so nobody likes war, but we do live in a great country where we can actually annihilate our enemies and turn right around and rebuild them. We don't make them part of our country, or they have to worship our God. This is an interesting banner. This one here is probably about 30 some years old. This is the old stuff. This is a vinyl banner with painted letters. This thing's seen a lot of mileage. And what we used to do is not only keep it as a banner, this was actually our bed. This was our mattress. Unlike today, where we pull into a town and churches will support us and people will take us in, once upon a time, nobody wanted to have anything to do with us. And so we would find the nearest park, and at night, our same banner that we had flying, we'd lay it on the cold grass and sleep there. That was our mattress. Get up in the morning, raise our banners, and go back and preach. And so, you know, this might just be like old, ugly, beat up sign, but it did have some memories for guys like me who used them. And so a case in point is not everything that you see on Mardi Gras is how we preach at every event. The reality is there's some events here in Hollywood where when we're preaching to movie stars, all we have is a sandwich sign or a banner flying. And so you'll see that as we go out this week. There's going to be some events where it's going to be confrontational, and some events where the sign is going to be plenty. Believe it or not, we even pass out tracts and literature. So, but usually people, the only thing that they know about us is we're walking around town with a pig's head all day, or we're walking around with electrical cords and preaching against homosexuals. That's not the case. As a matter of fact, depending on the circumstance, that's who we preach to, and our message is very much tailored. And so not everything that you see is how we preach to every person. If a person actually has a good attitude, we're willing to put our banners down and spend all day with that individual if we need to. And so this is just a little glimpse of what it is that we do when we go out and do certain things. Anything from megaphones to sandwich signs to literature to handheld signs to different types of poles. In some cities, having anything with a wood dowel or having any wood metal poles is illegal. They do allow PVC. Well, we got PVC poles and we can still hoist on side of our banner and do it. So it doesn't matter what the law is, we can always accommodate them and make it. And so with God's great wisdom and God giving us a brain, when the city says we can't do things, we regroup and turn right back around and do it. May not be the same way, but we're still there trying to amplify what God has to say. So I only say this to maybe put a thought in your mind, that because maybe you've seen us at a homo parade, we only deal with that message during the parade. We don't, a sodomite gay pride parade, we don't preach that at a concert, we don't preach that at other events. Depending on the venue, you want to tailor your message and have signs to do so. Now, if you are just now starting off and you need a sign, obviously you're not going to have an arsenal like I do. What you need to do is have a general sign. Know the God of the Bible. Jesus Christ can save you from hell. Something general that you can use. And then the more you start preaching, then God will give you wisdom on maybe another banner. If you want to preach to religious people, then have another banner. So my suggestion to you, if you're going to get a banner, is have a general banner. And your general banner should have two sides. One side that's very quick, trust Jesus, know the God of the Bible, and then the flip side is a little bit longer of a message. Because if you're standing in an area where cars are going by, you can't have a long message because they zip right by you. So you want to be able to flip that sign where they can be reading as they're driving by, versus a place where people are standing around and you can turn around and have a banner with 2 or 3 Bible verses on it. Doesn't matter. But the point is, you can't have something with a lot of lettering for a car driving by. So try to get something very basic, a very basic banner, something simple on one side, maybe 4 or 5 words, would be plenty, and then something a little bit of a longer version on the flip side. And hope that helps. And stop watching YouTube, get on out in the streets. At what point do I take no for an answer? That pretty much varies. Is it a police officer? Is it a security guard? Is it somebody, a pedestrian? Is it another believer who's going to tell you that God just spoke to him about you? At what point do I take no for an answer? Never. That's when I take no for an answer. I rarely will say no. There's always a reason why. It may look and appear as though you say no, but it's almost like a chess game. You give up a pawn, you give up a rook, but you're going to take that queen. You're going to say those 2 words, checkmate. And so you're not going to retreat and run away. But there's always an angle on having somebody knowing God's will, regroup, and respond. Police tell you you can't use this. Well, okay, well then fine. Come up with another scenario, or take them to court, whatever you wish to do. But the issue is never say no just because you're told you can't do it or you're offending somebody. That's why jails are made, and that's why you might have a jail ministry. But don't think that, as a matter of fact, the word retreat should not be in your vocabulary. I get broken when I hear churches, we're having a wonderful retreat. That shouldn't be in your vocabulary. Christians should always attack and charge and rush when they see sin, when they fight the devil, when they contend for their faith. Don't run away from it. You should always attack it. And people are always going to tell you no for a reason. If I took the word no, I probably wouldn't be doing this. I'd be knocking on doors, or I'd be passing out literatures, leaving a track on somebody's windshield. Hopefully that won't offend anybody. Get used to the word no, because on the judgment seat of Christ, you won't hear the word no. You'll hear the word, welcome, my good and faithful servant. I use a lot of different type of signs for different events, different venues. And again, some of the brothers that I know that can make these signs, we can maybe use some very cheap vinyl so we can put something on there and remove the vinyl and reuse that particular banner. But signs and banners are a tool. Okay, they're not that everybody should have them, but they are a tool. I own a painting business, which means I have certain tools. Good brushes, good ladders, nice tarps. You have all the stuff that makes you do a paint job properly. And so if you're going to open air preach, it's good to have a tool. And a banner is a good tool. I can be in a conversation with somebody, and when that conversation is going, that banner is still declaring what I'm doing to the people walking by. Okay? So oftentimes some brothers say, well, I was in a great conversation when passing out some tracts. The problem is you got hundreds of people that pass right by you that had no idea what you're talking about. You guys could have been talking sports, politics. You could have been talking about your girlfriend or your mom's last, what you had for dinner. But with that sign, it is amplifying exactly who you are. We've had heathen actually see our signs a block before they get to us and maybe go down the side street, and that's just not to even walk by us. So they are tools that are used. And you need to be familiar with the tools and how to use certain tools. Some signs are massive, some signs are big, some signs are sandwich signs, and signs are very important. Advertisement works. Nobody sees a Coca-Cola truck go by and say, that really turned me off. I'm going to start drinking 7-Up from this point on because that Coca-Cola truck went by and it just completely turned me off. Advertisement works. Everybody knows this. And what's interesting about a sign is you'll get a Christian that says, well, brother, I don't think it's right to hold a sign. Yet that same guy can work for a union and actually go on strike and carry a sign in public on the same sidewalk that he said he'd never do. So it's kind of a bit odd that a union can inspire a man to put on a sign and hold the sign and walk around in public on the sidewalk, but yet God's Holy Spirit can't provoke him to hold the sign. We have numerous verses in the Bible that say, go out and publicize what God says. A sign is a good way to publicize what God says. So signs work, and you want to have a cluster of different types of signs. And if you're preaching, say, at the Mormons, it's good to have a sign that deal with them, and if you're in a conversation with them, they walk by, and you're still able to plant that seed and water that seed, that maybe down the road they will have doubt in their church, and some other Christian can reap that harvest and get them out of that cult. Oftentimes people will use YouTube or Facebook as a way to determine whether what you're doing is of God or not. It's almost as though here's a Bible verse that will inspire you, But, you know, that can't do much. You need something from YouTube or Facebook to inspire you. You have to understand, when we first started, we didn't have any of those YouTube, Facebook. We actually read the Bible, was inspired, and went out and did. You don't need me telling you via a video and you sitting watching your computer to get out there and do it. You should have already been programmed to do it once you got saved and got born again. That's without dispute. But it's very interesting how people will use Facebook and YouTube. Even my critics will say, brother, I don't see anybody you know, carrying a sign in the Bible. How come you're carrying a sign? How come you're having a Christian t-shirt on? How come you've got the pig head? How come you've got the cow costume? We don't find any of that in the scripture. Well, we don't find a word YouTube either. We don't find a word Facebook either. You want to find the word pig head on a pole, it's right in between the word Facebook and YouTube in the Bible. Yet people will use those as a tool and yet kind of omit that you know, there's certain things not found there. Doesn't mean God can't use that. Don't think for 1 second because YouTube didn't inspire it, it's not of God. There's plenty of things in the Bible that you need to do aside from them. And if this video can influence you, I have to wonder, why didn't God? Why didn't God influence you and provoke you to go out and preach? Oftentimes, it's always amazing when I pass by churches, it's Revival Sunday. It's like, you mean all this 51 weeks this pastor's been preaching, there's been no revival, but now they paid for this guy to come in, and now it's officially revival? How about revival right now? How about you just reading the Bible and it's having revival right now? You don't need to have revival because some minister stands in the pulpit. That's ludicrous. You don't need to get inspired because of a video from somebody on YouTube, or you read somebody's blog, or you seen something on Facebook. If you weren't inspired by the Bible, there's not much pulse from my end that I can do to help you get up and go for heaven's sake. So take that, buy yourself a cup of coffee, and have some good breakfast.